Hello, and welcome back to the Right Brain Podcast. We have my beautiful friend Twinnie here.
Hi.
Her album Something We Used to Say just came out, and it is badass. You guys need to check it out. But she is also an incredible actress and moved here from York 2 years ago.
The OG York.
The OG York. We're just the
The
New York.
original York. Yeah, we're from New York. You're from the original York.
Yeah. I've been here 2 years. I think we met probably around the time I moved, actually.
Yeah.
But I've been coming back here for like 7 years. And thanks for mentioning the album. The album was definitely a breakup album. I was with someone for 10 years, and that was kind of like, yeah, he decided we weren't forever, so I decided to make us immortal. And
that's what you get.
yeah, I'm like a concept person, so that was very much. I released a couple of EPs that were called Blue Hour, 2 parts, and then I was like, do you know what? I'm not done talking about this breakup. I'm gonna milk it for all it's worth, and then added 10 more songs, and we broke up in 2022. So there's 22 songs, and it goes through. I mean,
wow.
I feel like if people listen to that album, they really get to know all of me, all the rage, all the sadness, all the anxiety, all the stress. Yeah, and it's funny as well in some places, but it was definitely kind of like my closing chapter. And you know when you just write something and you don't really know, well, I knew why I was writing it, but I just accumulated all these songs and I was like, yeah, it'll be a real shame for them just to sit on a Dropbox, a hard drive, and no one ever hear them. And I feel like, I don't know about you, but when I write something and I feel strongly about it, I'm like, well, I feel if I'm feeling it, somebody else is bound to feel it. So, and I had a lot of like great response. Like The Way I Loved You is probably one of the best songs I wrote, and I wrote that at like 2:30 in the morning, just absolutely bereft, crying my eyes out. And then a year later, I made my grand old opera debut.
Yeah, that's incredible.
With that song. So it just goes to show you, like, when you're in, like, what I love about creatives is that you can take something that's really painful. I think it's quite a gift, actually, that if you're not creative, you'll go to therapy or whatever, but I think there's something really special in turning that pain into something. I think it helps creatives, like, navigate their own pain. I mean, I always say songwriting is cheaper than therapy, and I feel like it,
true.
you know, generally is, because I feel like I write stuff and I don't really subconsciously, I'm writing stuff that I'm not even aware of sometimes, and I'm like, why am I saying that?
Yeah.
And then you look back and then it's got a whole different meaning. Now when I listen to them songs, I'm like, yeah, I'm so over it, it's fine, whatever. You know, thank you, it was a gift what you gave me. But at the time it was for sure very painful. And I've loved this podcast, by the way, because I'm such a geek in, like, I just love knowing about people and how different they are, and the science, like the brain. Like, I'm a big energy person, so I feel like what you put out, you get back, like all them frequencies. I'm like so interested in it, and I know nothing about it, so it's really cool to be here. But talking about that album, it was probably one of the first experiences where what was going on with my body, like how like trauma affects the brain. Like, before that breakup, I was fine. I had like loads of health problems after that breakup, cysts, fibroids, like even a heart thing. And it was, it really kind of shook me to my core of like, okay, how do I get better? Because everyone's like, oh, you'll eventually get over it. And yes, that day will come. But it's so, you try and do all these like right things, like eat right, sleep, but the heart especially, like I've heard it's like got a memory or something like that, like how your brain and your heart work. It's like I read up somewhere, and correct me if I'm wrong, but when you like break up with someone, like your brain is actually searching for them. I'm gonna get this totally wrong, guys. I am not the expert. But it's like something in your brain, like the sensors are like looking for that other person. So your body is craving that other person as well. It's like almost like a fix that it's not getting. And
Yeah,
it's like a withdrawal
I think
symptoms.
I think it's interesting, that's partly true, and there's obviously reasons for that, and we'll talk about. But whenever and I think also we used to always think that she used writing and song as a form of therapy when you were a kid.
Yeah,
Like
for
she'd
sure.
come home from her soccer practice or from school, she'd go upstairs, and then she'd do her homework in her little bedroom, and then all of a sudden we'd hear her singing and whatever, and and it was her working out her stuff. So like you said, I think that's how creative people in the right brain kind of tends to go. But we like to also go back and look at the full context of somebody, right? Like you're talking about a period of your life where it was traumatic, and obviously you went through a breakup and all that, and that had impact on your body and your health. But what we want to do is start a little bit before that. Like what were you like as a kid growing up? Meaning that, obviously you're a very gifted, very talented person. When did you start writing music? When did you start being interested in that? When did you start when did your creative side come out? And did you also have any other issues as a kid, like any learning challenges, or did you have any emotional things that you struggled with as a young kid?
Can I just ask you a question before
Sure.
we start, before I answer that? So for somebody that's not listened to this podcast at all, can you explain the difference between the right brain and the left brain? Because you said I was a right brain, so that's like creative's brain. What are the characteristics of that person versus like the left side of the brain?
Yeah, well, both sides of the brain have creativity. So, but we do tend to think about that right brain being more creative from a standpoint of the right brain likes novelty or newness. So it comes up with new ideas or things that no one's ever thought of before, or paint something in a certain way. Where the left brain is creative, but it's more about taking what's out there and recreating it. Like people that play classical music, they play Mozart, it's been played a million times. They may modify it a little bit, but the right brain really develops first, and it's primarily about social relationships. It's about building relationships with other people so that we have other people around that protect us. And it's about connecting with our own body and our own feelings. And so, really it's about looking at the big picture of things. We don't form memories so much with the right brain. So the right brain is more intuitive, subconscious. That's why you said, it's almost like a subconscious thing. Like it comes out of your subconscious. That's your right brain, right? So your right brain, things that we're not necessarily aware of, but are there. And that's where intuition and gut feelings and those types of things come from. And it also is why trauma tends to live in that subconscious and in that right brain. And people that are right brain dominant have more emotions and are more connected to other people's emotions. You feel your body, something called interoception, feeling of pain, hunger, thirst. Any sensation can be very, very strong. The right brain perceives most of that. Being able to read that on other people and connect with other people. Whereas the left brain is really more about just kind of collecting data and information, and it's more verbal.
That explains a lot. That explains a lot. You were talking about like going back. So I grew up in kind of like two cultures. My dad's side of the family are all Romani gypsies. My mum's a Gorja, which means non-traveler in Rumnus, which is a gypsy language. And I mean, as far as writing or singing, like we've got videos of me. I was always a quick learner, very quick to do things, very instinctive. Like 9 months old, I was already walking and like singing, like we've got videos of me. I'm the oldest of 4 children. I have always, I think this is probably a testament to like my dad's side of the family, how I grew up. But like from 6 years old, I would say, or maybe earlier, we'd travel around Europe. So I was exposed to different cultures, different kinds of people. Being a gypsy has kind of like, it has a different meaning in America. It's more like that bohemian free spirit. But in the UK and other parts of the world, it's like, it has like a very negative, like, kind of view from people. And I think growing up in 2 cultures, So I always felt like, oh, who do I like want to be? My dad's side of the family are all about telling stories. They're very social people. My dad is very instinctive, knows how to read people, a great salesman, could make you think that table was black, like could just like very showman, So I feel like a lot of my creative tendencies come from that side of the family. And then like going back to like school, I felt like I always had to be kind of on my toes or instinctive. Maybe it's subconscious because I knew what people felt about gypsies anyway. Like there's things in my brain that even in my adult life that, and we can talk about that, but it's just like how you're wired is very interesting to me. I would, a lot of people would try and pick on me or my siblings. So especially being gypsies in like a predominantly gorgeous school where there was no other, because travelers didn't go to school. Like most girls, they don't go to secondary school. The boys don't go to secondary school. It's different here. It's like high school. You call it high school, right?
Yeah.
So we stopped going to school when we're about 11. The guys go to work with their dads and the girls stay at home, and it's very like family oriented. They get married very young. I feel like growing up in those two cultures, like I liked the best of both. I was the first to go to school in my family. Yeah, always kind of on guard and defensive. I growing up, people would say that I was defensive and I know how to fight, or I know like you can say no to me, but for sure I'm going to follow up and I'm going to turn that no into like a yes. And I feel like that's where my resilience and my determination come from. Like, and it comes in handy in the music industry because it will beat you down if you let it. But I've always had like this like inner knowing, even from like being probably, I used to say to my mom, I want to live in America, or I would talk like an American. I put that down to what we watch on English TV because everything's American. But yeah, I think growing up as the oldest child and my mom and dad not being that stable, I was always kind of like a referee. So one parent, I always was like scanning the room, and I do that a lot. So I feel like as a person,
So like feeling a sense of danger almost looking
oh,
for danger.
yeah, I'm always scanning for danger. And I think I've heard that as a trauma response, but it does come in handy. Like I have an ability to read people, I think, really well, or sense energy, because, you can just tell if someone doesn't like you. And I don't really care who doesn't like me, to be honest. I don't have time.
You've always been like that? Or was there a time when you were younger when that would have really bothered you, or you really wanted people to like you?
Yeah, I think at school I really wanted like to fit in, and I always felt like I didn't fit in. That's either the teachers, like I was very chatty at school. I wasn't a trouble causer at all. I didn't like get sent home. I was.
Did you do well academically? Like,
I
did
was
you have
really
any
good
trouble with reading or math or any subjects or any of those things?
No, my teacher, all my reports were like, Twinnie is really gifted and she's really smart if she applied herself. And I think that was my attention span was always like, if I wasn't interested in it, you couldn't make me be interested in it. The only reason I got like great scores in maths and science is because my best friend at the time, Amy Barker, we would just have such a laugh. But because the teachers had, a perception of me of like, oh, there's this gypsy kid, she's causing trouble. And like, the boys would tease me and call me Gyppo. And I am a loudmouth, so I would like, fight back or like say something. They'd just send me out. I was the problem to them. But in doing so, they kind of did me a favor because I did really well in maths and science because I was by myself. I had no choice to focus. But things like, I remember I was in like the second year of like year 9. So it was my third year. Or how old I had been, like 13. And I organized like a full like on show with year 7s, year 8s, year 9s, year 10s, and year 11s. So I was bossing people that were like older than me and like doing this show and organized it. And I always had like that. I think being an oldest child and like, you know, go pick your brother up, or like go make that, or like, can you make me a cup of tea? Like, you know, I was always like the doer and the organizer. So I feel like I really excel. If you give me a challenge, realized I like to be challenged a lot, even in my relationships, my personal relationships with men. If something is like, if he's nice, it's boring to me.
Yeah,
And
I relate
I've
to that.
learned that is probably not obviously great, and I've calmed down a little bit. I would prefer nice, but there has to be that thing, like I want to be mentally stimulated, I want to be emotionally stimulated, I want to have great conversation. I used to do this thing where I would just check out, like to my teachers or my friends, and my friends would be like, I would start a conversation midway and they would be like, what are you talking about? But I'd already had the conversation in my head. I don't know whether you ever do that, but
I have
a lot.
conversations with myself all the time.
No, but a lot of people have said that I do that. Like, do you just expect me to know what you're talking about? Like, and I've already, in my brain, I've already been like talking about it, or we've talked about it 2 days ago, and I've come back to it. So it's just little things that.
Someone close to me, I won't say because my wife would get mad if I say this, I think, but she will do that a lot. She will be like, she'll say something to me like, oh yeah, and then, you know, that's what she said. And I was like,
I'm glad I'm
who
not
is-
the only one
who
though.
is she? Who is
That
she?
makes me
Like,
feel more
I
normal.
didn't get that first part of the conversation, and she'll be like, yeah, it was in my head. I was actually thinking, wait, she's like, keep up. You
Yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah.
So,
But yeah, for the most part, I think, you know, when you like see children, and you've got 3 children, so you probably know better than me. But from my experience, we've got a lot of kids in my family, and seeing them how they are as babies, they're pretty much that now that they're older. Like little things that they do, their characteristics, like their personality. I don't really think I've ever changed. I feel like I've probably mellowed out a little bit. Some people might say I'm still feisty, but I feel like I've always been the same. And the thing that keeps me going with music, because as you know, it's so hard. We're in like an ever-changing world, like competing with algorithms and AI. And I think the reason I do music is, and I've just realized something which is quite profound. I think I did music because it was for connection. But I remember, this is actually quite sad, but I remember my dad used to go away a lot, like come back and forth, always coming and leaving, which
as part of work or as part of like a relationship, meaning fighting with your mom?
No, work. And then, yeah, my dad wasn't the greatest. Like, I love my dad, but yes, he would go, and then he'd come back. And I felt like there's definitely some abandonment issues there. So I feel like when he used to come back, I used to like put on a show, or I would make my brothers and sisters do a show with me, or I would sing, and that's how I would get his attention. And I think that is one of the things that every time, because he never wanted me to do this career. He always, like, he knew I was good at it, but I think he was worried for me. He worries for my happiness. Like, he wants me to settle down, have a nice guy, have a family, and not that I don't want those things. It's just hard with my job. Do you know what I mean? But he always was like, no, I don't think you should do this, or you can't do that. He was probably my main kind of driving force to be like, every time I did something, I'd be like, told you so. Underestimate me. That'll be fun. Like, I love my dad, but I think he was operating out of a place of fear because he didn't know anything about that world. And from, Gypsy Man, he's like, seeing me like on stage or like working with God knows whoever. He doesn't know where I am. But I think that's one of the things that like at the beginning kind of started me off, like a need to impress and to prove myself. I still feel like I have that now, like this something in me. I feel kind of lucky, and maybe you do too. Like, I've never had to question what I was going to do. Like, I always knew that I would be on stage. I've done musical theater, I've backing dance for other artists, sang for them, like, always wanted to be a singer. Like, I felt like there was like an ultimate knowing in me,
Yeah, I felt
like
the
a
same way.
calling. I don't know whether it's, very spiritual, I guess, but every time I feel like I want to quit, I'm like, can you just send me something to just send me a sign that maybe I shouldn't? But I think like this music stuff and acting, any entertainment, I've switched my mindset into this is a lifestyle. It's not just my career, it's my lifestyle. So how can I do better in other areas? Like, because you'll go out and you'll meet people and that's how you connect, and it's very social. Sometimes my social battery is so dead. I am talking to somebody and thinking, I just want to be asleep right now. I really don't. This person is really nice, but I just don't want to be here.
Yeah.
But I have to be here. You're always, everything is always out as an
Yeah,
artist.
well, you talk about that a lot, about how you just get run down when
Yeah, you just need to
wanna
like
be social.
recharge. Like I'll have like I'll be like so social, but then I think maybe because being like an empathetic person and a right brain person where you're like constantly sort of feeling everybody else's energies, and I feel like when I'm entertaining people, I'm also like hyper aware of how they're all feeling and what they're all thinking, and then taking all of that on, I'll just like be depleted of I don't know, just all of my energy.
Yeah. Because I'm still working out how to do that. Because I literally feel like it's a superpower to be able to like read somebody or feel somebody's energy. But I don't know how to not take it on.
To
And
shut
like
it
that
up, right.
empathy thing,
It's
I'm
kind
like,
of it's kind of double-edged sword. You can't really. That's the whole point. The right brain actually, when you talk about empathy, the definition of empathy is literally to put yourself in that person's shoes, right? It's not sympathy is really more from a distance. You can feel bad, but empathy is where you literally feel what they feel, and the right brain does that automatically. And people that are really right brain dominant, it's this subconscious superpower that you literally look at people's body and you kind of, that's the energy type thing. You kind of read little subtle movements of the eyes or face or little things, in your right brain subconsciously instantly puts it all together and then compares it to what you would feel like in that, like with your body. And that's how you're literally feeling that other person's emotions. You're taking on those emotions literally so that you feel them. And you adopt the same facial expression, even with micro movements, so you can't see it. There was a study that was done where they looked at people and wanted them to be able to look at other people's emotions or facial expression and try to tell what that person was feeling, try to project onto it. And there were a group of people that couldn't do it. And the people that couldn't do it were the ones that had Botox, because Botox had made their muscles of their face weak, so they couldn't adopt the normal facial expressions that they would. And those people also did worse on tests of empathy. So it's,
wow.
So that's why when we say someone's an empath, they literally are feeling other people's, and that is what, the right brain drive to connect with people, again, for survival and to be part of it and wanting other people to love us because they have to protect us. But then there's also the ultimate fear is the fear of rejection. So I don't know if you've ever...
I think me and rejection at this point are like best friends. I've been rejected so many times. It's like water off a duck's back. I mean, I'm being serious. Like even men at this point, and sometimes I'll date somebody and I'll be like, they'll do something. I'm like, I know it's because people can only meet you as like deep as they've met themselves. And I think like my problem is I would rather be friends with someone. Like I have empathy for those people because I'm like, oh, you're just not further along in your journey. Not that I'm like I know everything, but I definitely am self-aware enough to know, oh, this isn't about me. This is about you. But my boundaries, I would say, often like suffer because of my empathy, because I can see that person is not, they've got a good heart, just maybe don't know how to use it, right? But there's something off that they've been through, and I kind of make not an excuse, but I'm understanding of like where they're coming from and why they've done that.
Yeah.
Where I never used to be like that when I was younger. I would get angry. I'd be like, why are they doing that? Or like I would react. I'd be always very quick to jump to anger and react as a kid. Not so much tantrums, but if someone did something, it would be ultimately like what? Like it would be from what, 0 to 100. Whereas now I'm like, is that worth my peace? Like, is it?
Well, when you said somebody did something, would it be that they would say something insulting to you, or they would
Maybe
embarrass
insulting,
you, or maybe feel like you were criticized, or they would, do something that you felt was like mean, or?
I think, yeah, I mean, me and my siblings used to argue a lot. I mean, we'd be dumb stuff, like my sister taking my top for like the 3rd time when I've told her not to. I think one of my main things growing up was like not feeling seen or heard, or just, oh, shut up, like, oh, go play, or, I grew up without social media, so like it was very outdoorsy. We kind of sorted our own problems out. Like criticism, I think criticism from people that I don't respect or that don't do what I do is really gets me. I'm like, okay, like I want you to be able to do what I do, and then you have a right to criticize it.
Yeah.
But like also I'm open to people's opinion and criticism if it's constructive, and if I've asked for your opinion. If I haven't asked for your opinion, keep it to yourself.
But the thing that I'm getting from you is that you were very different as a child than you are now, and you've learned a lot of these skills and a lot of these coping skills, but obviously a big part of what you talked about in this whole album that you just did was all around this breakup. And obviously that you've alluded that was very traumatic for you, and there was a lot of pain that was associated with that, and that you wrote about that. So how does that, can you talk about that? Like what happened in your relationship, and what was the, how did you feel? And
I think my ex, very much looking back on it, reminded me of my dad in certain qualities. I think he was an avoidant. I was an anxious. For a long time,
attachment disorders.
Yes.
Yeah, I definitely.
You listen to our show on attachment disorders.
I definitely am an anxious person. But it's so funny because like if a person likes me, I become an avoidant.
I was just saying that to my mom, actually. Yeah,
it's real. Like I'm a hopeless romantic. I would love to have what you guys have. Like my grandparents, my dad's parents, 89 and 90. They've been together since they were like 19. They argue like cat and dog, but they love each other. Like I would like that. I'm not gonna have a marriage that lasts 60 years long unless I live to like 120 or whatever. But the breakup reminded me. I don't even think that. I think a lot of that, if I'm honest, was ego, because he did ask me if I wanted a ring or a Rolex for my birthday, and I chose the Rolex. So that tells you everything that you need to know 6 years in.
Your ego or his ego?
I think my ego. I think he was very much my safety net. Looking back, listen, I think he's a great guy. I will always love him. He'll always have a special place in my heart. But I think the thing that I did not deal well with is being abandoned. Because he wouldn't talk to me. He basically ghosted me. He sent me an email and he ghosted me after 10 years, which I thought was a very coward thing to do. And looking back on it, he probably had someone else that was treating him better, fair play, whatever. And I am no saint. I know that. But I'm more of a like, hey, if we've got a problem, because I know that there's a problem, I'm not a passive aggressive person. There's nothing passive about me. I will stab you in the front and you'll see it coming, not the back. So I think people here take me the
what's Madonna's husband, Guy Ritchie.
Yeah.
You sound you like talking about the gypsies and everything. I mean, you sound like a Guy Ritchie movie to me. Like, do you know his movies?
Yeah.
You know, like the one with Brad Pitt.
Snatch.
Snatch, right?
Yeah,
with the pikeys and
yeah.
So even your accent.
Yeah,
is kind of
I know the person whose camp that was where they filmed. So
Oh, really?
yeah, but yeah, no, I think it's just the attitude of like, in my family we can have a full blown argument, and then the next time we'll be like, all right, John, give me that clicker to watch the TV. It's like that. It's just that's the way I got brought up. If you can't have a conversation with me, we can't sort this out. I can't stand people who avoid confrontation.
Because you can feel what they're thinking anyway. Like whenever that ever happens to
I hate
me,
it.
I'm like, I'm stressed. If you want to wait a couple days to talk, fine. I already know everything that you want to say and I can feel it. So just say it. Because I'm just going to be anxious now, waiting for you to say something that I already know that you want to say, but you're too scared to say.
Yeah. And I mean, I think, sometimes I've been told I can be quite intimidating, and like, I personally feel like I'm not, but I'm just like, I seek the truth a lot of the time, because I feel like in my childhood, there was lots of things that were going on, and I knew what it was, and it was trying to be like covered up. So now I'm like, I don't like people lying to me. I'm like, just give me the truth. Just like, if my song's not good enough, you don't want to put it on that playlist, or like whatever it is, with a friend. I just find if you're able to like have it out, and like, I think conflict is good. I think we live in this like social media age where everyone just like avoids, like just everyone's avoiding their own feelings.
Do you feel like, because it sounds like you may have had some, fear of abandonment, which ultimately is, again, rejection, right?
Yeah.
So you said that's the ultimate fear of the right brain is rejection. So
is that quite normal? Is everyone scared of that? Like,
right brain dominant people are, yes.
Right.
Left brain dominant people, not so much at all, really. That's part of the problem with the avoidant attachment, right? So I guess maybe you had some fear of abandonment when you were a child.
Yeah, it's my dad. Sorry, Dad.
And that was
abandonment.
and that was pretty deep in you. So, like, do you feel like you have trouble in like getting into a relationship? Do you feel like you have issues like revealing yourself or being emotionally connected? Is that partly what happened, or do you feel like you get too emotionally connected because you said you have that anxious attachment?
That one.
But then you also said that when somebody likes you, you get avoidance. So you like almost sabotage it yourself, it sounds like.
It depends who it is, I guess. Like, I think the older I've got, like, I was with someone for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I remember meeting him and just being like, oh, I'm gonna, that's my person. I'm gonna be with him, And I've experienced that only twice in my life. But I wouldn't say that I have a problem like connecting with people. Like, if I've got that attraction towards somebody, I think my problem is I will go straight into a relationship without even knowing it,
Yes,
but that's the kind of person.
You also just yelled at me for that.
I'm that kind of person in my friendships, though. Like, my friends, I'm the first one they call if they're in a fight or if they're in any kind of trouble, or they'll know that I'll pick them up from the airport at 4 a.m. or they can call me anytime. Like, I just feel like if I let you in, then you're in, So if I get to that place with someone, it kind of cuts deep to be like, oh, well, you've seen all of me now, and now you don't want me, and now you're leaving. I think that's just like kind of very human. And you know what it's like. Like, every person I've spoken to, it's just really hard to date. Everybody's wanting to connect, but no one's really wanting to connect as well. I think like everyone's got these checklists, and I think like we're being like programmed now that there's like the grass is green and there's so many different options. You could be DMing people, and I'm like,
because of social media, but also, do you feel like your industry here also fosters that more? Like, again, where maybe you're afraid to get too tied into somebody or get into a relationship because you're building a career, and that may be hard to do, or?
Yeah, I think everyone's just like in their fields trying to do their thing. Music is like I don't know, you're just like more of a freer person, I guess. But yeah, I don't know. I guess it's always just an interesting combination of people. But I was also just thinking about what you said about how your breakup affected your body, because I went through like a very traumatic breakup a year and a half ago, and I never had bad skin ever in my entire life, and my skin was unrecognizable, and I like had all these like kind of, I feel like, similar like weird health issues. Like I like was so tired I could like barely get out of bed, and like, and I know that's probably like dives into depression and stuff like that, but like, so you feel like so many different things in your body changed after that.
Completely. It was kind of wild. And I spoke about this before the podcast, but I did the first sign to me about like how your body, because I grew up as a dancer, so I was very like connected with what my body was doing anywhere, and I know how to heal it. But I had a motorbike accident on the 9th of the 10th 2011, and mine was a compound fracture. So my boyfriend at the time, he had to wait like 3 days. I got seen straight away. The nurses came up and they were like, "We need to get you up." And I was like, I do not feel well. They're like, "No, it's just a morphine, get up." Tried to get up, walked 2 steps, just like projectile vomited everywhere. They moved me into a different room. Turns out,
Did you hit your head? Did you lose consciousness at all?
I don't know whether I hit my head, because you know that my helmet was off, but I landed like this, and I was like this far away from a lamppost. I mean, somebody obviously up there likes me, but I just remember him coming over to me, my boyfriend at the time, and he was like, "Oh my God, your bone is out." And I was so calm in that situation, like to the point where, you know, not to toot my own horn, but I was a really good dancer, I think. Like, we just opened up in an original cast of like Rock of Ages in London's West End. And my first thought was like, "Oh, that sucks. I don't think I'll be able to dance again." But I was fine with it, probably in shock. Anyway, they did the operation. I got up, the morphine hit me, and they took me to this different room, and I caught a bug called C. diff, which for then 10 days, I could not eat or drink. I was just on a drip. I remember my friend Lindsay coming in being like, "God, your skin looks amazing, but you look like you're about to die." And I felt like I was about to die. Lots of complications. When I came out of the hospital, and this is what I found so interesting, how the trauma in your body, how it affects your brain and how that manifests. So I came out and I could taste every bit of salt, sugar, fat in food. I didn't want to eat food because I'd not had it for so long, and I was scared. I'm really scared of being sick. I will try and avoid it. I don't even get blackout drunk. Like, I know my limits because I just never want to go there. And food would overface me. It got to the point where my mum, if we were going out for dinner, or my friends, I'd be like, they'd send me the menu first so I could pick, because I couldn't decide, and they would just order for me. And then I developed, the doctor said I wouldn't be able to dance for like 18 months. Typical Twinnie, being stubborn. I was back on stage in 4 months, just doing my like a cut down version of my track, which is like my part in the show. And then I kind of developed this, like, I guess it was an eating disorder. I don't really know. Like, I think it was more because I was like terrified of being sick. I was really thin. I would barely eat because I was frightened of being sick. I would eat food, and my brain was craving only sweet stuff, which I feel like your body's searching for serotonin or something like that. I would chew food, eat a little bit, and then spit the rest out.
Yeah.
And I wasn't even aware that that was like an eating disorder. It wasn't even like I was trying. Like, I just did that automatically because I didn't want to be sick, but then I didn't want to be like too full to then go on stage. And like, my brain was so not there. Like, all my friends were like, you need to eat a burger. I mean, I am very slight. I've always been very slight, and I love food. I love carbs. It's my first love, you know? And with the stress of the show, being in pain, like everybody kind of like watching me, I only got better when I left that show. But I would go into the supermarket and be crying on the phone to my mum for like 45 minutes because I just didn't know what to eat. Or like it would manifest. It's like,
And crying, like, because you were afraid of eating something that would hurt you, or I mean,
No.
What would you be crying about? Like,
just
what,
because I was so hungry, but I couldn't decide. I was stuck
so
in
you
a
couldn't
loop.
make the decision
Couldn't
of
make
what
a
you were going to eat,
decision.
and the decision was because of what? Like, what were you deciding between? What was preventing you from choosing? Because of taste, because of smell,
Yeah.
because you felt like it might make you sick?
No, it was probably because I just had no clue what to feed my body. I didn't know no food was like. I didn't fancy any food. Nothing was appealing to me, not even chocolate, nothing. I'd just be
Would
like,
your smell or taste like less, or
yeah, just anything. Nothing was appetizing to me. And I knew I needed to eat, and I was so tired. And I was like, oh, I do remember going to this chiropractor though, that kind of changed my life. He was like fixing my body. And I was telling him about like the food stuff. And he was like, just eat food that reminds you of like a happier time. Like eat food that you like that you fancy, that's like hot, or like, stews and stuff like that. And I remember I was like, I would eat this like stew, or like get a soup from prep, because it would remind me of my grandma's cooking. So it made me feel safe enough to like eat. My brain was reattaching my memory to the food that I used to like, and then I was able to stomach it. But I've never been like that in my entire life.
like when you say stomach it, would you get nauseous? Would you feel like you were going to throw up? Like, would you start to gag at the food?
No,
or something,
I would
or?
be able to stomach it. Meaning, like, if I had that food, I would be like, it would be fine. I just, when like you get like et up about stuff, and you're
Yeah.
like, sorry, I said different English words, so you'll be like, what is she saying? Like, I used to get like anxiety about like eating the food
We
because
may
in
need
case,
subtitles underneath.
yeah, definitely subtitles.
Just subtitles in English. Yeah.
Translation. Yeah, just because I didn't want to like throw up. I was terrified of throwing up. I hate it. I cannot tell you how much I hate it. And there's not any particular memory of like when I was younger that was like, oh, this is because of this.
And was it the fear of possibly throwing up? And was it
Yeah.
also, was that, because I had a patient I dealt with this. She was a young girl, good athlete, soccer player, great artist. She was actually going to college for art. And she got injured in playing sports, and she hurt her back. Didn't really realize it so much, and then she went into that whole hyperventilation thing, and
Oh, yeah.
and the tingling and all of that. And she also, from the time she was a little girl, she saw someone throw up in class, and to her, she kind of felt so bad for that kid, because it was like that must have been the most embarrassing thing that child could have gone through.
Yeah.
And for her whole life, she was afraid that she was going to throw up. Like she'd go on the school bus, and her mother would have to follow her in her car, because she was afraid that if she got sick and nauseous and she was going to throw up, that her mom would have to come on the car and take her off.
That's
And
so
this was
wild.
just this obsessive fear that she had, and she was so right brain dominant. And it ended up getting to the point where she was so afraid of doing anything because of that fear of throwing up. And it was, to be really because she saw that kid, and she felt like he must have been so embarrassed, and
Yeah.
she was so afraid of being embarrassed like that, throwing up in front of people.
Yeah. It's wild stuff like that I mean, I can't really remember anything like that. Maybe, no, I can't remember anything. It just was wild to me how it manifested itself. I think it was basically a control thing.
Yeah.
Also, after that, I became obsessed with saving money, and I do not save money. I spend it like,
After your trauma, you became obsessed?
yeah.
So
yeah.
after you don't, not sure, but you probably hit your head. Even if you don't hit your head, your brain gets jumbled around with something like that, especially if you're going, because your brain is pretty mushy and soft, and it will definitely rattle around your skull. and you'll get a brain injury from that. But as you said,
They
you
never
know,
checked that, actually. They probably should have done.
yeah,
Probably
probably should have said if you had a concussion. A lot of your symptoms sound like a concussion, right?
Yeah.
That we would look at now, but even back then in 2011, people weren't really talking about it much. But you're describing is like this clear connection between your brain and your body and your health and your emotions and your health and your perceiving things and how you perceive the world and what's real and what isn't real.
Yeah.
And that it might even change your sense of taste and smell, because head trauma will do that sometimes, because we really smell in kind of the front of our brain. And so if we injure that. But we were also talking about your relationship and how that all kind of fit in. Mm-hmm. That background is actually important, but as far as the relationship trauma that you feel like you had, do you feel like there was some emotional trauma that you went through with your breakup, or?
You joking? Yeah.
Did you? What emotions was it? Depression?
Sure.
Was it fear? What did you really feel?
I think I just felt completely alone, like probably the loneliest I've ever been, and yeah, really didn't take care of myself at all. Never been a smoker. Started vaping around that time. It was like imagine your whole world just falling apart, and like
So
everything went
did it
away.
mess with your self-confidence or your
I think
self-esteem or?
For sure. I think like it took me a long time to, and I think there's still things now, because I feel like he robbed time from me. Whereas like I stayed in England for him pretty much. There was no other attachment there keeping me there, and I wanted to come to Nashville. And one of his emails was like, yeah, I feel like I should have done this 4 years ago. And I was like, that was pretty shit for me, because I was like, I could have been over here. I was still signed at the time. I could have been making more of my life. I could have moved on, like for women as well. When you're getting older, you think about having a family and stuff like that. I feel like he robbed time. I was like kind of angry. And then I kind of just got to a really spiritual space with it, especially that song that I debuted at the Opry, almost to the day. I was like, I feel like people set you free and you've got lessons to learn, and maybe I just was stuck not learning the same lesson, because it's not like we were healthy. It's not like we were a healthy, happy couple, but I think we were both used to how we both grew up, and,
Was
dysfunction.
He a gypsy as well?
No, but he'd been around them, so he was familiar, and I think that's why I liked him, because he was familiar to me, because he kind of acted like one and had similar morals or whatever. And I think we were just, we were used to dysfunction, and we didn't have the emotional tools in order to communicate with each other effectively. That, we were both very young at the time, you just don't, and then you hurt each other and resentment builds up, and then you lose respect for each other, but you can't let each other go. And I think when he eventually was like, no, this is, he for the last 6 months, I put him in therapy. I told him to go to therapy. And then when I went on tour, he was like, yeah, I think the therapist was like, yeah, this is probably not for you.
Therapist was supposed to be on your side.
Just ruined my life. But I think it was one of the best things that's ever happened to me, but also the worst. And that song in particular, The Way I Loved You, kind of it's grieving a life that I had to say goodbye to, but also celebrating this new one that I've been lucky enough to meet new friends and share this journey that is it's complex, and the importance of keeping the right people around you, I've realized, affects your whole life. Uplifting, being around people that uplift you and that are there for all seasons. And I think that's why I am a truth seeker and like to get to know people. I hate small talk. I love talking about what's underneath the surface, what's messy. Let me see the worst of you. I'm sure I can handle it and we can be friends, you know? Like, I love that stuff because that's real to me. There's so much we were talking about social media that's just not real, and I hate it. I don't feel like my soul actually aligns with that a lot of the time. It makes me sad. The world makes me sad. So I just try and like keep my world kind of small, and the small piece of real estate of like online real estate that I take up, I try and make it like positive or like do something that tries to connect with people. But ultimately, I think like that's what life is about like connection. And what interests me about this podcast is just like the science behind why I do things. Why am I doing that? Like, what is the root problem here? What am I feeling in this moment? Why have I reacted like that, you know?
Yeah.
And it's just, I feel like that's what we should be teaching kids at school, or like even meditation. Like, I meditate every morning, even if it's for 5 minutes and before I go to bed, and I sleep with a 528 frequency. And I just like go to sleep with like happy thoughts subconsciously, because I want to wake up the next day and be like, okay, what am I going to learn today? You know, like I want it to be a good day, because you can't control everything, but you can control how you react. And I feel like the more I understand myself, especially with any relationship, how do you expect anybody to know you if you don't really understand yourself, you know? And women, especially, we're very complex.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like all the science behind stuff really, really interests me. And it's fascinating to me how the lack of love from a very early age, I was very loved, but I've seen it in other people, how that can manifest into addiction, or like just them going on a wrong path because they want to, you know, connection. They want to find people, and sometimes they'll find that love in the wrong people. And yeah, that kind of, I feel like we should be talking about all these like coping mechanisms at school from a very early age. I feel like people would be, especially now with social media, it's wild.
Yeah, well, that's what I liked about you when we, like, because you and I had, like, known each other, but I think we, like, really got to talk in Key West, and me and Twinnie were playing the Key West Songwriter Festival, and we shared an Uber to the airport, and I think maybe you were talking about how, like, two guys had gotten in an argument the night before, and I was like, that was my ex-boyfriend and a friend.
Yeah,
and you, like, heard all the drama, and I was like, that was me, and that is the story about my breakup. And like, I didn't really know her, so I didn't know how, like, she was going to react to that. And she's like, you know what? Everyone's just pretending to be something. I really like that I get to, because I was like, well, this is what happened, because I ended up just telling her, and she's like, I really like that you're just telling me what happened underneath, because everyone here is just trying to pretend that everything's perfect, and it's not. And it made me feel really comfortable, because, like, obviously I wouldn't normally let people in on that part of my life, but yeah.
Well, I feel like I love this quote, and it says, and I always repeat this because I think it's so important, but like, once you shine your own light, it gives others permission to shine their own. So if I'm like, you're telling me that, I'm like, girl, I'm just as fucked up as you. I climbed somebody's roof and was wanted by the Metropolitan Police, you know? but stuff like that, it's like, these are little things that, you know, that is also wild to me, how love can make you do the most insane things. Insane.
Yeah. I wasn't insane. He was insane for the most part.
Well, I've had a few insane moments. Not insane, but like definitely out of hurt. That is a true story. I was wanted by the Metropolitan Police because I scaled a roof and shined my torch on my like flashlight on my phone into his bedroom window. I was like hanging off a drain pipe because I thought he was cheating on me. And then the police called me. 4 unarmed police officers turned up to my door and was like, so yeah, you're wanted by the Metropolitan Police. And they thought I was on the run. I was like just crying in my bedroom at my mum's house. I probably hadn't showered for 2 weeks, just like rocking back about like, he doesn't want me. But that was quite funny. You know, I've had a very interesting life. I am not perfect, but I'd rather talk about this stuff because I feel like you know, online everyone's like, it's the highlight. No, show me your lowlights. I'd be much more
That's
entertained.
just when you said that, you know, when you shine your light, you give other people. But when you said that, I was thinking it's almost important also when you show your vulnerability, when you show your pain and your weaknesses, you give other people to be able to be okay with that, because they look at you guys, you know, beautiful, talented women. You seem like you have everything, and you know that nothing in your life could be, you know,
It's
bad.
not. We're perfect.
And
We're so perfect.
We're perfect.
And when you actually say, and that's what she talked about, you know, like, we didn't want people that were going to come on here that were just going to talk about their career and pretend that they were the greatest and the coolest and everything was just perfect with them. You know, we wanted people that were going to be really real and authentic, and that's what Ella saw in you. Was she was like, she
is a
example.
psycho.
No, she's somebody who's really real and authentic, and she's going to be able to not be afraid to talk, and also, you know, tell people that, you know, she's not perfect and that she has these emotions and these vulnerabilities.
Yeah, I'm
and
so
everything.
emotional. I am very. I'm trying to dial it down a little bit, because it's like it just comes out of me. Like I'm just a very, very emotional person.
I am too.
And sometimes
But that's also where your songwriting. See,
Yeah.
you know what I always the theme is always that there's a gift that you have. Like, you have this incredible gift of songwriting and singing and performing that you've had for your whole life, and that was partly also because, like you said, your fear of abandonment or rejection of your dad, and your dad was like that, and you got that from your family. It's built on traits that run in the family, these gifts, these talents, which means in your case, again, areas of your right brain are stronger than most people. But with that comes these emotional vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
And you feel emotions, you feel other people's emotions so much. And, you know, that can go either way. Like you said, some people can get lost with addiction or self-harm or, you know, eating disorders or a lot of things, and push people away, and or other people can learn coping ways to make them more resilient. And it sounds like you did a pretty good job of doing
Yeah,
that.
for
Thank
sure.
you. It's a shame I don't have the gift of like spotting a red flag. You know, I
Me
read
neither. I
somewhere-
can do it for my friends, not for me.
Is this true? Can I ask you? Because this is something I saw on social media, so I'll have to fact check it with you. But can you tell like what someone's gonna be like by their facial expressions?
Oh, I know. Yeah. I
Like,
saw
or
that
the
too.
way that they smile, or like their eyes are a bit down. I'm basically talking about like psychopaths.
Yeah, they
But,
say
like,
sociopaths don't have wrinkles in their forehead.
but like, is there some relation to like people's facial? You know, we've all done it when we see someone like they look a bit weird. You know, like you can be totally wrong. We'll never judge a book by its cover, but scientifically, Saved by the Bell, is there some like, I don't know, correlation between like people, the way their
Well, you know, as
facial
far
says?
as one of the things we talked about was looking at facial asymmetries,
Yeah.
right? So like if like one eye is bigger than the other, or if the corner of the mouth comes down, or you have differences in there, or if, you know, there's head tilts, or
I'm about to Instagram, like look at all my ex-boyfriend's Instagrams.
yeah, so you can tell from that. It's a window into what's happening in their brain and the nervous system. And to me, you know, whenever we have people like a psychopath or what is a sociopath, I look at it from, you know, the left brain generates pride and anger and joy and happiness.
Yeah.
And the right brain generates, you know, sadness, shame, guilt, embarrassment, sense of danger, things like that. So if you have somebody who, let's say, has too much pride, maybe mixed with too much anger, and they have no guilt, no shame, no embarrassment, highly intelligent, that person's a psychopath, or could be a sociopath or a narcissist.
What's the difference between what's a sociopath? The definition of a sociopath and a narcissist.
And a narcissist? Pretty similar. I mean, like, again, if you look at definition, it's really a sociopath is somebody who's more, you know, not fitting in with social norms, you know, doing things that are, you know, going to do things that are against society and against people and against, but whereas a narcissist is more somebody who, you know, really kind of just is self-absorbed with themselves, or, you know, in my sense, may have too much pride. You know, they just think that everything they do is great, and they don't have really. They usually lack self-awareness. Both of them lack a certain level of self-awareness.
I mean, as a like creative, I guess we're all a bit of a narcissist in this industry anyway. You got to be a bit narcissistic, I think. Like,
Yeah, you gotta have a touch of it.
I think so. I'm interested in like when it's like the unhealthy. Is that like just not considering other people? Like,
yeah,
well,
I think
it's
when you look at narcissism from a
I'm basically
standpoint-
checking if I'm a narcissist.
I think if you're checking if you're a narcissist, that means you're not a narcissist. Because I've checked in before too. The people that should be checking are not checking.
That's actually that's a perfect answer right there. Actually, right? True narcissists are so lack self-awareness. Now, there's a difference with having a certain ego, right? You have to have a certain ego and confidence to be successful in a business like yours.
Yeah.
You take an athlete, somebody who may, knows that they're really good at what they do, and over the years have been used to getting people telling them you're really good or that, or as a singer or as a performer, you have that, but there's also a sense of doubt that comes with this. And actually, right brain dominant people usually struggle with that, where, again, we had talked about that saying that I have a big ego with low self-esteem. And real, true, like clinical narcissists don't have that. They don't doubt. They don't think like, oh, am I a narcissist? They wouldn't have that level of self-awareness to think like that. So, there's this.
Good. I'm not one then.
So close.
So close, but I have got one more question for you. So I'm sure we're all a bit ADHD. I definitely know I am. I probably should be on medication, but I refuse it because, I don't like taking anything in my body. But I think this is a trait of ADHD. Do you do this? Like, you will wait to the very last second. But I realized earlier, I said I love being challenged. I feel like I wait until the very last second to like do stuff.
Oh yeah.
Is that ADHD?
Well, again,
I don't know what it is,
we've talked about ADHD things. There's a lot of things to a lot of people, and there's a right brain and left brain version of it, and there are different subtypes of it. But what you're talking about is really more like procrastination, like putting things off.
I'll get stuck in loops. Like, I'll just get stuck in loops. So I'll like scroll or whatever. I'm like, I need to do this, and then I'll put an alarm on. I'm like, gotta do it now. And it'll be the very last. But I will say I've always been like that since a kid.
Yeah, I do
think
the
it's
same
some
thing.
sort of like adrenaline of like a challenge. That's why my time management is shocking.
No, mine is horrible. But you've said that's part of like, I don't know, being a right brain person. Yeah, they do that.
Yeah, I think, because there's a lot of mind wandering that comes along with right brain because of that creativity, and there's something called the default mode network in your brain, and it's a little bit more right-sided. So we go into this like imagination, or when you go into like your own thoughts and kind of go into that and kind of lose touch with what's happening around you because you're caught up in your own thoughts.
And
Some
task
of that-
avoidance.
And task avoidance. So being able to get yourself to do something that you...
Tax avoidant.
The left brain, gets you to do things and sets goals and, is more...
I feel like I'm good at that though. I do set goals and I do get stuff done. It's just maybe, I have noticed that though.
But the motivation to be able to do it, you know what I mean? Like that's the whole thing, that you get it done, so it's there, but in younger kids or in your younger days, when you were younger, maybe you wouldn't have gotten it done, or you might have missed it, or you didn't get your homework done, or you didn't do something that you knew you were supposed to do because you just couldn't get yourself to do it. If it wasn't that interesting, or if it was something that maybe you weren't going to do well, or that you'd maybe be embarrassed by,
Yeah. Well, are there supplements that you can take to like focus? What do you recommend?
There are. I actually have a supplement that I've created called Attention Focus.
There you go. Nice plug. Didn't know that. Get it plugged away.
Right. I give you a cut. You can get it on my website, actually.
There you go.
And but that's more to boost right brain and right brain neurotransmitters, which are serotonin, which, as you said, sometimes when you're craving sweets, part of that is, that helps, create maybe more serotonin.
Yeah.
In your brain, but the right brain is more serotonin and what we call norepinephrine. So those are the two main neurotransmitters in the right brain.
So do they allow you to focus better? Because that's the one I need.
I know, I need that too.
There's different types of focus and attention. So hyper focus, like where you really want to really intensely focus, that's the only type of attention that the left brain primarily does. And people that are right brain dominant have trouble with that.
Yeah, I need more of this.
So this really narrow, intense focus is left brain. The right brain is more this open, kind of broad, sustained attention. And so if you have too much of that, where you're kind of paying attention to everything at the same time and in your head and everything is going on, and it's hard for you to, all right, I just got to narrow this focus into here.
Yeah, that's what I have the most trouble with for sure.
Do you recommend, are you allowed to talk about this, but have you done like research on like mushrooms and stuff like that? They're using that quite a lot out there.
You know, I mean, for me, there are things you can take, supplements and vitamins that can help, but the bottom line is, it's really about specifically creating balance in different networks.
That's what I need to do.
So it's really like activating
I'll put some lasers on your head.
activating the left brain, maybe quieting down some of the areas of your right brain, so that you can create more balance between your hemispheres and between the networks of your brain. That's more physically doing things that can activate different areas and kind of quiet other areas. Whereas any type of supplement or medication, it goes everywhere. So it doesn't go to just one area. And even though drugs are supposed to affect different serotonin levels, they really affect the sensitivity to the neurotransmitter, not really make more. You don't make more neurotransmitters per se.
It's weird because I don't really, maybe a handful of times I've smoked a joint, but I have noticed, and this is why I don't do it, is like when I had weed, this side of my brain would go weird. Not like weird, I would feel it, like it just in this side of my brain. Not here, it would just be like here. And I'd be like, I don't really like that.
One side of my face will go numb when I smoke weed. That's why I never smoke weed. It might be the same side of my face.
One side of your face?
Yes, one side of my face will go numb in my ear. It's really weird. I don't know.
No, I know. You know, you're funny you saying that. I will feel it on my right. I will feel it down here. I will feel it on my right side. So I just wonder if it's like shutting off that part of the brain.
Yeah,
maybe.
that's interesting.
Even with mushrooms as well, when I've taken them, like microdose, I can feel it a little bit more.
Yeah.
But that they say that like kind of opens, makes you more like creative. Not that I need to be any more creative. The focus. I need to focus.
Well, he can, I guess, give you exercises and stuff too that will
Yeah, and I give you
could send some
a
to you.
copy of my book, also Disconnected
Yes,
Kids.
please.
Which is
I could
something-
talk to you
No.
for hours. I've done many a podcast, but I have loved this podcast because I just think it's so needed, especially for like our community or any creatives actually online.
Right.
I think it's so, knowledge is power. And once you know why you're doing certain things, you can get to the root problem rather than just give, take this. This will make you feel better for a bit. I'm all about like trying to get into the root.
No, let's
It's
fix
all
it.
about
Let's
the root.
fix it.
Yes.
Well,
And-
having people like you on here is exactly what we envisioned. So it's like, this is amazing because I admire you so much. I think you're so insanely talented. You're such
Back
an
at
amazing
you.
performer.
Thank you.
It really is like absolutely beautiful to watch her. And it's really wonderful that you are sharing with everyone all the things that you struggled with. Because like he said, I think most people wouldn't think that you struggle with those things. And it helps so many people for everyone to find out like, oh, she's just like me,
Yeah. I think we're all on the spectrum and we've all got things that we need to work on. But if you're not aware of it, we've all got blind spots. It's about, you need other people in your life to be like, yeah, you might be a bit off there. Or you're doing that, like accountability. So I've thoroughly enjoyed this. And also, speaking of singing, aren't you playing the Bluebird tonight?
I am. Yeah. So,
Very exciting.
Thank you.
Go check out her music, my music.
check out her
His
music.
book.
His book. His
Her
vitamins.
jewelry line.
Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank
It's
you.
been lovely.
I've loved it. Thank you.
Okay. Until next time.
Ciao.